Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Viola Kerekes, the project coordinator of the Hortobágy National Park przewalski horses. And in this project, I will talk about this special reserve in the Hortobágy National Park. First, I would like to tell you a history of the last true wild horse, the przewalski horse. And then I would like to talk about the przewalski horses in Hortobágy, why they are here, what do they do here. And then I have to talk about how we manage this horse population. Or maybe many of you know that before the human being in the prehistoric time, the ancient large megafauna, the wild horse, the ancient aurochs, the wild asses, they were all the habitat of, they all occupy this habitat of Eurasian steppe. There are bone findings, descriptions that prove this is true. On the picture, you can see a cave painting in Spain, so it's for sure that these horses were everywhere in Europe. But as the humans started to grow the number of the humans and the agriculture developed, these wild animals disappeared in Europe. First the wild horses, and then in the Middle Ages, the ancient aurochs as well. So the European people thought that the wild horse died out, they disappeared. And in 1991, there was a Polish soldier called Nikolai Przewalski who went to the Chinese-Mongolian border and discovered a wild horse there among the wild asses. This was a really huge thing. Just imagine that there is a large mammal in the heart of Asia and the European didn't know it. So there were many expeditions after this discovery. They tried to catch horses. And they succeeded, and 52 horses survived the transports, and they went to different European zoos and private institutions, and even some of them went to the USA and Australia as well. But from these 52 horses, only 12 reproduced. So all the today living horses are the descendant of these 12 horses, and unfortunately, they are able to reproduce with the domestic horses and with the development of genetic methods, it turned out that in the current population, there are 2 or 3 domestic horses as well. So after they caught the horses and brought into the zoos, first they didn't do anything, they just breed their own population. And then it turned out that the inbreeding started to affect the horses and they didn't have foals. So people in the world, they came together and they decided that they have to set up a stud book, which happened in 1959 in Prague, and they are still writing this stud book. And this means that each of the horses has the whole genetic, or not genetic, but pedigree background till the beginning. So every registered horses, we know all the ancestors till these 12 ancient horses. In the meantime, przewalski horses disappeared in Mongolia. They died out in the wild in 1969. And, but in the zoos, they survived. And due to the lot of effort of different people, biologists, zoo people, private people, these horses reproduced very well in the zoos, and they even went to so-called semi-reserve, which are small areas surrounded. And in the end, there were so many horses that reintroduction projects started, first in China, and then in 1992 in Mongolia. In the meantime, because of the drought and the climate change, unfortunately, certain places where przewalski horses was found originally were not good for them any longer. So, for example, in China, the area is so dry that they are still in kind of breeding centers. They cannot let them go free. But in Mongolia, there are 3 places where the przewalski horses live now. In 2 places, they are totally free, no fences. Like in Husztynyrú, there are approximately 400 horses now, and Takintal, which is Gobibi. And there is a 3rd place, Komintal. Here it is still surrounded because the nomads are around, and why they can reproduce with domestic horses. It is very important If we want to transport przewalski horses somewhere and reintroduce to their original habitat, the domestic horses should be disappeared from the land where they should go. And why they are in Hortobágy? So the original habitat of the przewalski horses, we think it was from Mongolia even to Russia, but not in Hungary. But we know that the ancient wild horse was here in Hungary as well. And in 1997, the national park wanted to have such a reserve, an area where human intervention is minimal. How we can maintain a grassland without grass cutting or burning or without domestic animals. We can do it to introduce wild animals. So the only wild horse was the przewalski horse, so we decided to bring them here. And there was a cattle breed, a very strong cattle breed, so-called reconstructed aurochs that we also brought here. This was a cooperation between the Hortobágy National Park and the Cologne Zoo. And it started in 1997. Why we thought that the Hortobágy region can be good for przewalski horses? Here you can see a habitat map of the reserve. It's 3,000 hectares and surrounded by electric fence, but as you can see, most of it grassland and wetland. So this means that they have food and water enough for feeding the whole year round. And the electric fence can be crossed by smaller mammals, but not by the przewalski horses or the cattle. The beginning was, of course, very tough. In 1997, the reintroduction projects only started. So we had to transport our horses from different zoos. And of course, in a zoo, the horses cannot be so strong than in the wild. So 1/4 of our transported horses died within the year when they arrived. It was partly because the horses didn't know each other and the stallion fought very seriously. And then, of course, the stress of the transport. And of course, there were some times that they were not able to adapt. The social structure of the horses consists of harem groups and bachelor groups. The harem groups are the harem stallion, the females, and the foals. The foals, when they getting older, at the age of 2 or 3, they always leave the natal group. This way they avoid inbreeding. And the females join to another harem, the males join to the bachelor group. The bachelor group is loose, like young males. They are together, they are playing, they are preparing for life, and they spend here 2-3 years till they are old enough to have an own harem. The harem groups, they are more stable. Sometimes even for years, the females are together with the stallion. While this is still an endangered species, only 2,000 individuals are living in the world, we have to report the population changes both national and international level. This means that we have to individually recognize horses. We cannot mark them individually because they are wild animals. If we want to do anything with them, we have to tranquilize them, which is kind of dangerous for both the human and the horses as well. How we can recognize them? There are 3 pillars. With the help, we are able to do that. So first we identify the harem group. There is always a characteristic individual, or the size of the harem, or the ratio of lighter and darker horses. With the help, we can recognize the group. And then we identify the horse with smaller marks, like whether it has stripes on the legs, or whether it has some injury, whether it has shoulder cross. But the most important pillar is the DNA database. When the foals are 1 year old and still next to the mother, we take a so-called biopsy sample with a gun. We doesn't have to go there and touch them. It's a dart that fell out from the horse, and the small tissue sample goes to the veterinary laboratory Davis to California. There all our individuals has this DNA database. In this way, not just we know who is the mother and the father for sure, but we will have a fingerprint, a DNA fingerprint database. And with the help of this database, we can recognize individuals. For example, if they go to the bachelor group and we cannot recognize them any longer, then we can take a repeated sample, and then Davis can tell us who the animal is. As the number was growing, the number of harem groups started to grow as well, but the average harem size was roughly the same. It's interesting that in Mongolia and other places it is roughly the same. So everywhere the average harem number is about 10. And in Hungary they started to create a large herd, and they are moving like plain zebras in Africa. We don't know why they do it, because in Mongolia they have home ranges. We think that it is because of they can do it because they have enough pasture, they have enough water, and in Mongolia they have only little water pools where they can drink of. But we are currently searching the reasons behind why they behave like this. I told you previously that, or if I not now, I tell that we doesn't have large predator in Hungary that would be dangerous for the przewalski horse. And that's why we have to kind of manage the population. What happens, I just want to show you 4 examples. What happens if we have large grazers and we doesn't have enough predators? For example, as I said, in Mongolia, in a Gobi Bay, there are przewalski horses. There are wolves, but very probably not enough to control the population. And because of this reason, when there is a very severe winter, there is a large number of horses who die. For example, in 2010, the 68% of the horses died because of the severe winter. Another example is the USA. Everybody knows there are these feral horses, the Mustangs. Once they were domestic horses and now they are wild, but we call them feral horses. In the old times, they can be hunted and caught and used, but now they are protected species. Now they have 80,000 horses. They have an everyday conflict with agricultural farmers and domestic animals, and they are destroying the landscape. The third example is Spain. There are Galician wild ponies. For thousands of years they are there, and there is a traditional management. They catch them every year and take the surplus individuals, use them, harvest them, use the skin, the meat, and they have these 2,000, 1,000 animals that doesn't disturb the vegetation. And there is the fourth example is in the Netherlands, Oswaldesplatzen. There are konik, which is a kind of a feral horse as well, deer and cattle. There is no predator there. They didn't manage them. They just put them there to graze there, to be good for the birds. And in 2018, when there was a very severe spring, 30% of their animals died, 2,000 individuals. So I think, and I hope you agree with me, that the human responsibility cannot be excluded. So if we are having this pressure on the predators, that there cannot be enough predators on the population, we have to intervene. We cannot avoid that. Otherwise, the animals will suffer. How we manage our population? We doesn't have, as I said, a predator, so we have to step up kind of as a predator. To reduce the population, we use 4 methods. Culling is something that we doesn't like very much. We love our horses, but sometimes when we find an injured animal or someone with a genetic disorder, we have to cull it. It's a professional hunter does it, and we have to ask individual permission for each individual. We have a coordinator. The przewalski horses has a European coordinator currently in Prague Zoo, and we have a species committee. They are the ones who decide when and what to do with the horses. So if it's a culling or a transport, it is always the committee who decide. We are not alone, luckily. Another thing, increase the export. This is what we like to do the best, because the horses can go to new places. Here in Hortobágy, it's a bit crowded for them, and they can have a new life. But zoos are full, so whenever we have possibility, we transport horses to different areas, and that we support very much. Another thing is to reduce the falling with contraception. This is, again, something artificial, but we have to do this. The good thing is that this is based on immune response and not hormone-based. And that's why, and also it is not eternal, so that's why after 4 years of not falling, then they can give birth again. And decreasing imports can be the other step. This is what we can't do. Because it is a closed population, time to time we have to bring fresh bloodline, otherwise the inbreeding will increase. So here you can see the population, how it changed during these 22 years. As you can see, horses felt very good here. The number increased really quickly. Because of this very quick increase, we decided in 2013 to apply this immunocontraception treatment. And the big, so this increase is caused by the large number of newborns and the very small number of deaths. It was because the area was very good for them. And you can see that in 2018 there was a big loss. It was the same very severe winter than in Ostwaldesplatz, and we had a very cold winter, very cold spring. And also previously, in the previous years, we had drought and the vegetation couldn't renew. And also we had many animals on the field, and that's why we had almost 100 horses that died on that very year. We would like to avoid that, and that's why we decided that whatever happens, we have to take out as many horses as much as born, whether it is an export or a culling or a contraception. Here it's just a little slide of the PZP, how it looks like. Again, this is wild animal, we don't touch them. So from far, from 20, 40 meters, we shoot it with a gun, with a carbon dioxide gun, and then this needle fell out and the material just goes in the horses. We have to shoot them 3 times, the same horses, which is sometimes difficult in the field, and that's why we cannot. So this is an effective method, but it's not very punctual, I should say. Here you can see that the not treated horses has much larger falling rate than a non-treated one, than a treated one. So it seems to be a good method. What was very interesting, we are just collecting all the data from the last years and try to analyze them. With this, we can help other przewalski horse keepers. And what was interesting then, when the pasture was bad and the density was very high, you can see here are the falling rate of the non-treated females. And you can see that when the environmental conditions were bad, the falling rate of the non-treated female was also decreased. So this is kind of a natural break. And also there was another phenomenon that the first birth giving was later than previously. So I mean that previously it was 3 years old when the females first give birth, and then it was 4. I already talked about the genetic parameters of the population. It's very important to measure them, and with this pedigree, the full pedigree analysis, we can do that on population level. So you can see that the inbreeding coefficient is slightly increasing, as I told you. This is a closed population. We need to have new individuals time to time. We cannot avoid this. You should see the purple line. It's a very good thing that the gene diversity is in a very high level. Gene diversity means that how many animals contribute to the gene pool of the whole population. So if the gene diversity is high, this means that many horses reproduced. If the gene diversity is low, it means that only a few horses reproduce. Our aim, that many horses should reproduce. So with the immunocontraception, for example, when we contracept individuals, we chose those who already has many foals. In this way, those who have less can give their part to the gene pool. Also, because of this natal dispersal and the dynamic change of the harem stallion, they avoid the inbreeding, and many horses will have a chance to breed. This is totally natural, and they just do it for themselves. It doesn't have to involve. So the future plans, in summarizing what we would like to do in the future, we would like to keep our horses with the different treatments or methods under 300. We have to keep on analyzing genetic parameters on the population level. We also would like to involve much more monitoring work because we think that this kind of management is very good for not just the horses, but for the vegetation and different taxa. And we would like to prove it. And of course, we support the scientific studies. So, and in the end, I would like to show you how we transport horses, just a few slides, and then I will give the word to András Sós. So first, the coordinator tells us which horses, based on genetic background, which horses goes to the new place. For example, here we're choosing the horses to Orenburg. So we go out to the reserve, to the 3,000 hectare, and from the 300 horses, we try to choose that 15 horses that should go on. This is very difficult. After the shot, we catch the horse, put it to the ground, and take the blood, put the chip in, freeze brand them, and then, still while it is still sleeping, bring it to the transporter. In a transporter, our veterinary wakes it up and quickly run out of this transporter. And then they have to spend 1 month in the quarantine, and before the transportation, the whole thing starts from the beginning. Narcotize the horse, catch it, and put it to the box. This box is specially designed by the Prague Zoo for air transport. So if the horses are transported by airplane, it's very important that they shouldn't move around too much, they shouldn't lay down, they have to stand, otherwise they would die easily. And the box, we cannot bring the horse, we have to push the horse inside the box after sometimes it's very challenging. Yeah, you see how many people is needed for pushing one little, and this is only a 2-year-old female. Very strong animals. And after we just put the boxes to the transporter, everybody's working, me as well, even if I have a little baby. And then the transporter goes to the flight. And then within 12 hours, because of the flight, the quick flight, within 12 hours, the horses could be released in the Orenburg Reserve, which was very fast. And you can see none of them had any problem. They all survived the transport. So that's all what I wanted to tell you. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank for the invitation. And as Viola said, we work together for many years with Hortobágy National Park. And I would like to share some of the experience I have with the Hortobágy horses, the Russian transport, and also I was fortunate enough to work in Mongolia and Kazakhstan with this project and wild equids in general. I see it here, but I don't see it on the stage. So is small yes, it's here. So yeah, I gave the title In the Puszta Steppe and Semi-Desert because, as you can see, these wild equids really inhabit different habitats. And I think I will not go into a lot of details about the story of the przewalski horse, but I would like to highlight that this is one of the species which zoos in general are very proud. And it shows that zoos and breeding in captivity has a good value and can bring back species from extinction, but at the same time, a lot of things, a lot of efforts must be made to protect the species in the wild. So as Viola said, General Nikolai Przewalski discovered the przewalski horses in 1881. And this horse, after a long story, unfortunately, extinct from the wild in 1969. But fortunately enough, Karl Hagenbeck, who was a very famous zoo person and the founder of Hamburg Zoo, just also captured horses. So you can see that all specimens alive today are descended from the 12 individuals which were captured by Karl Hagenbeck and survived. So to put the story short, after the Second World War, only Prague and Munich Zoo had animals, and coordinated breeding started back in the 1970s. Breeding programs both in Europe, these are the EPs, and North America, these are the SSPs, started. Semi-reserves were founded, these are fenced areas, and the reintroductions took place in Mongolia from the early 1990s. So, the Hortobágy National Park, Viola also gave a few words about this, but this is a, fantastic place, which is also a World Heritage Site, 100 years This is a very diverse national park, and also very famous, mainly famous, or was famous previously for birds. More than 320 bird species occur there, and it's a very important place for crane stopover, or, for example, other nice species like the dotterel in the bottom right corner of the slide. So, horse project in Hungary, when it was started in the mid-1990s, Hungary was always considered to be an equestrian nation, but grazing and habitat management was very, very important, as Viola said. So it was actually bringing back a large herbivore and manage the habitat, partly, as I wrote it here, to maintain endemic plant and animal species ecosystems. So, the Pentazug Pea Horse Reserve is a very interesting area, which is a kind of semi-reserve because it's fenced. And we have the project here, and this was the source, of course, for the horses, for the Orenburg project in Russia. Some beautiful pictures about this really nice pusta area, and also on the right bottom corner, that's the Great Bastard, one of the treasures of Hungary as a natural country. So what are the goals of the project? As I said, nature and landscape protection, species protection of przewalski horse, and the Hortobágy horses are member of the European breeding program, which is very important. At the same time, the hack cattle, or the other name is aurochs, are kept there also for further breeding and forming the breed. And the research, of course, is very important. So I will show all the elements in details. The przewalski horse is originally from Central Asia, and the largest population, this is also very important, can be found at the Hortobágy National Park. It's around 300 horses right now. The project, because here also extreme weather conditions can occur, has a goal of minimal human intervention and maximum 30 days of feeding a year, which sometimes can happen. And you see this number here. Unfortunately, I didn't make it up to date. Maybe Viola can tell, but you can see that this is a very good breeding place for the horses, and EP animals are here, and good source of horses, and also good source for the Mongolian reintroduction, as horses were taken here directly to Mongolia. Okay, so now I'm going to my field, veterinarian stuff. The research started there are many research projects, of course, about parasites, about behavior, about using the habitat. But this is a veterinary-related research which was done by the Vienna University. And the question was how these horses can adapt to these very harsh conditions, climatic conditions, how they regulate their metabolism during the winter. And we measured body temperature and heart frequency with high developed technical instruments. And you can see on the picture on the left, we could even just do surgery in field conditions. If you have all the equipment and you know what you do, it's possible. So for this, we had to catch the horses. We had to provide just conditions which are surgical, aseptic conditions, and we put these devices under the skin of the horses. And you can see some of the pictures here of the surgery, and also some of the pictures when the horses were reversed, the anesthesia was reversed. And also you can see on the right side a radio telemetric collar on one of the horses, how to follow them. There are other a lot of researches are going on. Viola also mentioned the genetic resources, how DNA samples are taken from the horses by the biopsy needles and the help of the dart guns. And also how the researchers, how the scientists follow the genetics of the different horses just individually. Also research about mutations, like you can see some of the color mutations, like the star, that's the domestic horse feature on the left side, curly hair stallion on the top, on the right side, and the fox mutation. Of course, these horses are not needed to maintain the species properly. And also some of the correct hoofs you can see. you could imagine that such a big place for horses would be an ideal place, and you would never encounter with hoof problems, but this is unfortunately not the case. Sometimes we encounter these problems, and even during anesthesia, we try to do hoof trimming if it's needed and if it's possible. Of course, we don't want to continue with these genetic lines. So, ethology is a very important research, and I just really would like to highlight what Viola said. It's very, very difficult to recognize the horses individually, and I really just respect the field biologists there who can do, because when we do our veterinarian work at the field, it's not just one horse, not any horse, of course, which we have to transport or we have to anesthetize. It's usually a particular horse, which they just really recognize according to the feature which was shown by Viola. And I think it's a fantastic knowledge what the field biologists have there, and they help the veterinarians to carry out the work. So, as it was said, przewalski horses live in harems or bachelor groups, and this is an important feature to know when we work with them. So you can see how we work as veterinarians with the horses. So we also follow the minimally invasive approach. So we only intervene if it's very important. Exceptions are only welfare exceptions, because the lack of large predators just doesn't allow properly to live naturally the population dynamics. We have to intervene. There are lots of tricks. I will show you lots of videos very soon, how we approach horses, what happens when we dart the horses, what happens, how they go down. There are lots of tricks. In the hortobágy, of course, it's a puszta, and very few hides are there, so we have to know it. Fortunately, because of the intensive research, horses know people, know biologists, so except for the very cunning ones, they don't really afraid of people, but sometimes it's difficult to approach them. Distance issues is very important, I will show, because the dart guns we use, usually the maximum 50-60 meters we can shoot. This is just the characteristic of the dart gun. You have to know it, and you have to use it. Camouflage, I will show what kind of camouflage we can use to trick the horses. I will talk about drugs, needles, and all the rest about how we handle, how we transport animals in the grassland, how we try to relax them using also drugs for transport. These are called the LANs, the long-active neuroleptics, and what we do with other things. One important thing which I would like to highlight here too, I think it was also said by Viola, that the hortobágy horses are really very, very good horses for reintroduction, because they're coming with the proper training. If you take a horse from the zoo, which has a relatively smaller exhibit and very good hotel life, getting the food, getting the proper care, it's a little bit different in the hortobágy, because the hortobágy is a harsh place. So the horses have to survive. If they survive properly, they are good candidates for reintroduction, and that's why it was already proven that these animals went to Orenburg and went to Mongolia with success. So let's see what we do. So what are the reasons for anesthesia? Of course, individual identification, banding, you can see it on the left side. If we transport horses, we have to test them. These are veterinarian conditions for certain infectious diseases. And we have to put them into a boma or into a confined area for quarantine. Of course, reason for anesthesia can be transport, like these horses, as I said, part of the breeding program. So it can happen that these horses are sent to another place, or we are getting horses. So every year, even there is no reintroduction project, or there is no transport to Russia, we anesthetize horses, and even within the hortobágy, it is possible that we move horses from one place to another. A medical condition is a rare occasion, but sometimes it can happen, especially if there's a welfare reason. So let's see, anesthesia. Of course, I don't want to into details, and I just put it here if for any reason a veterinarian sits in the audience. But one thing which is maybe important to mention, that the evolution of protocols. We learn by doing things, and of course there's an evolution of different drugs, and at the beginning we used a drug solemnly This is called etorphine, which is an opioid, and it's a very dangerous drug. At the same time, two veterinarians have to work because if there is an accident, the other can help. We still use this drug. This is very important for wild equids, but we combine with other drugs. You can see this protocol. We use actually a combination of 3 or 4 drugs, alpha-2 and opioids, and we have effect within a few minutes. If we have to top it up because the transport is long, or we want to do something and the time is not enough, we use ketamine drops intravenously. It's very important what kind of needles we use, because if it's a big distance, the needle and the dart can bounce back. So we use long needles which are colored, and also we have to think about what will happen after the horse. So we have to, when we finish the procedure or the transport or the horse is released, we have to reverse the horse, especially in those areas where are wild predators, like in Kazakhstan. Not talking about just horses, or Mongolia, also talking about wild ass species. You cannot have the luxury that you release an animal and maybe half an hour later, because it's still sleepy and not moving properly, a wolf will catch it. So let's see. I would like to show you a little bit of what the difference is between a field condition and zoo condition. These are hack cattle, and just the light blue circles, you can see those muscles, which are primary target areas for our darts. And you can see the difference and the challenges. Of course, there are individual differences, and in captivity, in smaller place, regarding the mental state, usually you have to also differentiate what amount of drug we use, and also you have to see that in a captive condition, this is a water bug, you see 2 darts in the thigh muscle of this water bug. So actually you have space enough, because these darts not fly. This is just after it's already, there's an effect of the anesthetic drug, but it was easy to dart this animal twice. You don't have a chance for 2 darts in the field. So yeah, it means that you use a dart which has a 3 cc volume, so it's very small, and at the same time, so you have 1 shot. That's you have to also hit the animal, but at the same time, it means that you use very, very concentrated drugs. The drug I mentioned, etorphine, is the combination what we used in the past. It was called large animal immobilin. It was produced in Europe, and 2 drops kill a person. And we use 1 cc at least for an adult przewalski's horse, which means 20 drops. And now, because it's not available anymore in Europe, we import the drug from South Africa, which is 4 times more concentrated than the drug from Europe. So you can imagine it's really dangerous. So you have to be careful about people and animals when you do these conditions, these interventions. So what are the other challenges? Weather conditions. If the water level is high, of course, we cannot work. Extreme cold or heat we would like to avoid. This is, for example, I will show you pictures about Mongolia. When I worked there in 2007, it was midsummer, and because of the very hot conditions, now in Mongolia it's not possible to do any kind of field capture in the summer. This is now a decision of the authorities. Also, as I said, the drugs which we are using is quite difficult to obtain, and the rows in the bottom line of the slide just show we have a very strict human protocol. If for any reason, hopefully it will never happen, but if for any reason an accident happens, then the other veterinarian who is in the field have to help the one in need. So this is the selection. I'm walking here with Viola, and Viola will show the horse. You see the horses are still relaxed, and I try to hide the gun, the dart gun, on my left side. This is the good part, because still they just relaxing and just grazing. So if we have the selection, sometimes, very rarely, it happens that we can close them in because of drought, and they come and we can close them in a smaller place, then it's easy, but it happens very, very rarely. Usually it's on the field, and the field biology shows what animal to take. If the animal is selected, we do the darting. then they usually they don't know what happens, and they just run a little bit, and after that they look around. Okay, which one was hit? But sometimes there are really clever ones, and they just go away. Or it also depends on the mood of the animals, whether on that day they are just in a wandering move and whether they will stay. So, what kind of other camouflage tricks you can use? On the top left corner, that's my colleague István Sándor, who is using this. He's the man in white, who is using this coat to try to dart a horse, but it's not easy in the winter time in the Hortobágy. And on the left side here, I'm just pretending I'm a tourist, because there's a tourist bus, and some of the horses just like tourists, but they hate field biologists or veterinarians especially. So I try to just sit in the tourist bus and try to shoot the horse. Or even sometimes we have to, because if they have some additional feeding, then it can happen that if I sit in the tractor, then I can approach them better than just walking there. So these are just the pictures. This is an ideal darting site on the right, on the Przewalski source, but sometimes you can see just the right moment. It was not an ideal darting site of that Kulan on the top picture. But actually that was a shot from more than 70 meters, and that animal really exactly knew the distance, the range of the dart gun. So it was a kind of and there were, I think, before that 2 trials, and the animal they couldn't catch the animal. So finally we could catch it. Even the dart went a little bit lower was expected. On the left side, left bottom picture, we can use this mammary infusions, which is used for cattle, just to put antibiotics into the wound, which is caused by the hit of the dart gun. Okay, so the effect on the left side, you can see a very typical effect of the atorphine, opioid drug. The horse will walk in very small gait, and then and also separated from the group. So we try to actually avoid any kind of head injuries and try to just catch the horse as soon as possible. So you can see a horse is already separated, and then we approach, because this is now the tricky part. The animal is basically blind, but we really don't want head injuries, so we just cover the eye and the head, and it stands still. And after that, if the horse doesn't go down by itself, we help a little bit, and we try to put the horse onto the ground. So after this, some of these pictures were shown by Viola already. You can see the procedure, which is usually very quick. Here we also weigh the horses, because they went to Russia, and we did the banding, testing, deworming, if it was needed, hoof trimming, all the tasks which are needed on the field. And this is also an atorphine effect. You can see the device which is on the tone of the animal. This is called a pulse oximeter, and it's a pulse oximetry. And this shaking, this is also a kind of typical side effect of this kind of combination. Okay, on the move, animal is put into the on the vehicle, and then goes a reversal, and then you have to be very quick, because the reversal is given IV. So you can see the hind legs, they can kick really, so you want to avoid that. And welfare issues. I also said that these are usually healthy horses which we test or transport. Welfare issues, on the radiological picture here, you can see really a very bad fracture. In these cases, we cannot help, so these animals are humanly euthanized. You can see all the reasons here, which we already mentioned about lack of large predators, and only the ethical need when we have to step in. Also, there are some other research about fall killings, for example, which happens, especially with some of the stallions. We don't know exactly the reason for that, but it's a managed population in some extent. So, reintroduction. The Komintal reintroduction site, it's within the buffer zone of the Karas National Park, and Prague Zoo took horses there, also from the Hortobágy. And these are just the pictures which were taken with our horses for the reintroduction. And they use these army planes to transport horses. And you can see the Hortobágy horses, maybe not on this picture, but basically it will be the same when the animals are released. And I just would like to speak about also the Orenburg project, where was a large-scale transportation in 2016 and 17. First year 14, second year 16 horses were transported to a new reserve in Russia. And this was the biggest transport ever in the history of the species with zero mortality. Complex action, as you can see, regarding paperwork, testing, pre-export quarantine, anesthesia, and shipment. And also a lot of things, because it was relatively a short transport, but you had to avoid different problems which you can encounter with the long transport. So you can see here the Hortobágy and the Orenburg site, which is roughly 2,500 km. And you can see all the steps of the procedure, how we started to select the individuals. We had a list which animals could travel. And then when the animal was in our hands, the banding, they were then put into this pre-export quarantine facility. And these are the crates, which were a little bit modified, but these are basically the Prague crates, and very good crates were made by the Hortobágy National Park. Sniffing dogs before the transport. If for any case there's an idea, they thought maybe we wanted to transport something else, but it was not the case, of course. And then when the day came, we had to put the horses to the airport for the special plane. You see our drugs which we use, quite a complex, and it's quite important to know what kind of drugs to use in certain situations. And then it was racing with time, because when the day came, after the 1 month pre-export quarantine period, we had to put these horses to the crate and then put them to the airport. And these were autumn times when we had shorter days. So even the horses were in a confined area, it was not easy. So you can see, and some really wanted to stay. Actually, on the very first year, when we transported 14 horses, on the papers it was 15 horses, and it was a very lost horse. And because the crate is small, we put the horse into the opening of the crate. We give the reserve, and then we push the horse into the crate. And this last one managed to come out. So actually, it stayed in the Hortobágy. It didn't want to go to Russia. So this is horses are there on the transport. Just checking the horses inside in the crate, and then it's already nighttime. It's this special device which puts the crates with horses into the inside area of the plane, and the horses are in safe hands. You can see these are the two pilots before landing to Russia. Maybe they also had a long day. But as you can see, we landed and we are here, so it's a happy ending. And then movement at the airport. This is the arrival. The first year, it was very, very cold. In the Hortobágy, it was 10 degrees plus, and on the following morning, it was minus 28 in Russia. So the horses really, you didn't see the big difference, but you could see on the people the big difference. And this is the release. First year it was in nighttime, and it was coordinated release. A lot of media was around. How the horses come out after the transport. It is a fenced place in Orenburg, and you can see that they are doing fine. Some of them are a little bit slower, but still you don't see any kind of effect of anesthesia. So then I don't have a lot of time, so I just would like to show some similar pictures how I worked with a white ass in the Gobi Desert and in Kazakhstan. Asian white species is a very interesting and very complex, taxonomically complex group of animals. They live in steppes, semi-desert, and desert. Some of them are extinct, unfortunately, and some are in big trouble, like onager in Iran, or Indian white, Turkmenian white, and the Mongolian kulan. Mainly the only exception are the kiangs in the high altitudes of China, India, and Nepal. So this is the Mongolian kulan. I worked in 2 countries already with them, and this is more or less what we know about them. 20,000 individuals. It's a vulnerable species. Unfortunately, it's a declining population due to a lot of reasons: poaching, habitat loss, and competition with grazing animals. It's quite interesting. And even there's legislation, but in reality, still a lot of poaching is going on. So these are pictures which were taken by me and my colleagues in Mongolia. This is a collar, how we found one of the Mongolian white ass. And actually, this animal was shot. So you can see the remnants of this collar and the signs of this shooting injury. Others also was found by us, are killed by snares. So still, it's a very heavy pressure on the population. This is the motorway in the Gobi Desert, where you have to approach these animals. And the one place where we worked was in Mongolia, also a place which is a reintroduction site of the przewalski's horses. So, again, research. There's a lack of information. What happens with these animals for effective protection? How large the area they use, what the social structure, what the diseases are. And for this, radiotelemetry was a tool. And for this, animals must be captured, and that's needed, of course. So what are the kulan catching facts? They also live in open habitat, that's difficult to approach them. And they start to feed from a few kilometers, very different from the Hortobágy horses, because they're afraid of people. People mean something wrong for them. So as you can see, the range of dargons, I put even 80 meters here because it's the type of the dargon, but usually 50, 55, maximum 60 is the type of dargon which we use with the carbon dioxide cartridges. But of course, this is depending on very much the weather circumstances, especially wind is not our friend. So, and as said already, we are using extremely dangerous drugs. What are the methods? One is the hide at the water hole, if you have one, and for this drought is needed, very time consuming, it's safer, but more difficult for logistics because someone is sitting just close to a water hole, maybe for a week, and maybe catches one. So we chose, it's not our method. The other one is the jeep chasing, which is actually a method for poachers. You need a special vehicle, the role of the driver is really crucial, and it's dangerous but extremely effective. So I will show you some pictures. This is the waterhole method on the left. This is the UAS used for jeep chasing. You just take out the window on the right side and the mirror and try to catch the animals. These are the ingredients, the extremely dangerous drugs, your dot gun with a short barrel, and the radio collars. And this is one of these sites. They already did it for several times. So they had a special vehicle with this extra tubes to have a safer environment if the jeep turns around. And then what are the facts? We have an animal which is between 200 and 250 kilo. We cannot change the dosage during the chase. We don't chase a mare with a foal. We have only a 3 cc dart, and we have a very high dosage of very, very dangerous drugs. So the chasing, they flee from at least from 1 km. The jeep approaches, their maximum speed is about 75 kilometers in an hour. That's for the stallions, and the mares have about 65. And we are shooting from a moving object to a moving object. Then we have to follow up, we have to find them, and the chase cannot be longer than 50 minutes. Okay, so just before start, these pictures were taken in Kazakhstan in 2019 autumn. You see the jeep, you see all the stuff on the right side, also the safety measures, and the base camp where we start. And this is Mongolia. You can see, actually, this car was just hired in the village. You can see the windows which are removed. And then these animals I really don't like when people approaching them in the semi-desert. This is what you see. And then the animal is getting closer. Adrenaline level is very high, I think, in every living creature around. And this is how we dart, if it's possible. And this is how it looks like in practice. This is actually Albert, who will present here just, I think, in 2 weeks' time. He's driving. This is Kazakhstan. And you see, this is far from an ideal shooting. And you have to approach them. There are a lot of things to avoid, especially turning around with the Jeep. And sometimes this is practice too, especially in Kazakhstan. This was the RLC region, and there are a lot of plants with thorns, and we had tire punctures several times. So actually we had to order a special tire to continue our fieldwork. Okay, so this is already when you were successful and your animal is blind and approaching you, and then anesthesia usually, as I said, it's very effective within a few minutes. You approach from the back, you fix and cover the head. Sometimes a small wrestling is needed. Sorry for that. But then it's usually a short intervention with about 15 minutes. And then all the measures, how we try to make it safer, the anesthesia. We use pulse oximetry and we monitor the animals. We put the radio collar. We collect blood for testing, especially for different infectious diseases. And then we do antidote recovery, especially with naltrexone, the full antagonist, because we really need animals which are 100% awakened. There are some rough recoveries, there are some smoother recoveries of animals. And then, if you are lucky, the different colors show different animals, and you can see they really cover huge areas. For the comparison is 250 km on the bottom, and there is the Mongolian-Chinese border. That's why they closed, because there's a fence. And in Kazakhstan, where we work, it was a different situation because we had to transport animals within the country. So we had animals, because in Mongolia, we caught the animals, we collected samples, and we released them. In Kazakhstan, we had to catch them, and we had to put them into a boma. That's why we could only work in the RLC region for a 10 km radius. And then we put the animal on the track to the boma. You can see, and at the beginning, the boma was not high enough and animals were just jumping over. So now it was important to learn that 280 centimeters high bomas are needed at least. And we did this 850 km long inland transport in 27 hours, and then we released the animals in central Kazakhstan. You can see the color on the Kulan. And if you can avoid this kind of transport, I strongly recommend you, because this is really too long. And we just decided, it was Petra Kaczynski and her group, that if this work can continue, then the air transport would be preferred. So thank you very much for, I'm about 2 minutes late, sorry for that. And special thanks for all the Hortobay team and all the people who are just mentioned here. And with Vidas is Petra Kaczynski and the International Kulan catching team. Thank you for your attention.